Welcome to Getting to Know You. This is the third week in our series of our women in women's history. And we decided that we would like to show you an early program that we did on that theme together with Barbara Purnell and Kathie Sakenfeld. So we will be giving that chance to you too. You probably don't remember it, and we have lots of new people, so enjoy that conversation. Welcome to Getting to Know You. Today we have a conversation in honor of Women's History Month. And in the spirit of history, it's what we have been living. We all make history, and therefore also shaping it. So I thought it would be interesting to invite two of our fellow residents here to think about this history that we have been living through and making as a kind of an example. We know that it occurred in the lives of many women, all women really, and also I should say all men probably. But it was really decades of path-breaking times for women. When we think of 100 years ago, we got the vote, but that was just the beginning. Certainly men thought we wouldn't vote or were afraid we would, but we proved that we could handle that, right? And then I think that as we think about our lives, it was really the war that changed all of our lives, as women had to take care of families the way they'd never had before. And they also were in jobs that they had never had before. And I think they probably worried just as much as they've always worried about what happened to their men and their children. But I think we would all agree too that the aftermath of World War II was really path-breaking. And we had the suburbs and new updated ideas about feminism. And I think all these things I'm saying are familiar to anyone who might be listening to us or watching us today. So as we have our conversation here, I hope that you will sort of join in and think about what you might be saying. We've had a little pre-planning, and Barbara Purnell and Kathie Sakenfeld, the two people who were willing to engage in this conversation, thank you. And we decided that we would sort of follow a three-part program, not totally organized, but spontaneous too. And that we would start off with just simply saying where we were in that sort of break after World War II and a decade of change and moving to the suburbs, that it seems as though just the time that we were graduating from college, that things began to break, and we might not have even noticed it. So, Kathie, can you link back to that time?
Sure, sure. So, I graduated from college in 1961, and I think unlike the two colleagues here, I went immediately to graduate school. But there are particular things that I remember about that. One was that almost all, or great majority, of my college women classmates were all getting married. And the word was out that if people went to grad school, that was to get an MRS degree. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking about what I could put into my graduate school applications, which I had to do in several stages, to try to demonstrate to the readers that this was not my purpose and that I was really serious about this and I was going to carry it through all the way to the end. Now, I was applying for a divinity school degree, which was not exactly what women did then, and also a doctoral degree in ancient Near Eastern language and civilization, which probably was not a more popular thing for women. But then they could have thought, oh, well, there are more men for her here, so maybe that's what she wants. So I was strategizing about what things I could say about my long-range plans. One other little story, at one point it was pretty clear that I was likely to be one of the accepted people in the doctoral program. And a male friend said to me, well, you know, probably they're not really going to let you in for two reasons. One, you're not strong enough to carry all the books that are required, all those dictionaries for the Near Eastern languages. And second, because there's that large puddle that comes in the rain between the library and the classroom building, and your legs aren't long enough to jump over it. Well, now, clearly this was in jest, but in looking back, I wonder, you know, kind of what was going on, what the guys were talking about. So that was my early stage in getting started.
Okay, how about you, Barbara?
Well, I think I was more of the norm. I got married like 5 minutes after I graduated from college. I mean, I had known my husband for a number of years, so it wasn't a last-minute decision for sure. And we moved to New York City, where Harry had a job, and I didn't. And in those days, you went to an employment agency in New York City to get a job. And most of the jobs for a woman like me who had a bachelor's degree in sociology were going to be secretarial or, you know, something kind of ding dong. And I got a job in the personnel department of a British insurance company, and it was fairly boring, but life in New York was not, and we had a great time. And then I got pregnant and we moved to the suburbs where we started to raise a family.
And did you go to a women's college or?
No, I went to the University of California at Santa Barbara.
Oh, what a wonderful place and what a popular place
Yeah,
today.
it was, yes, yeah.
I don't know if maybe it was that way when you went there, but.
Well, it was a lot smaller then. It had been a teacher's college for a number of years, and it had only been a university for maybe less than 10 when I went there.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
I went to the University of Pennsylvania, but I didn't really go to the University of Pennsylvania because I was a woman and I could only enroll in the College for Women, which was a very popular way of handling women in large universities.
Like Radcliffe and
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. We had our own newspaper and our own classes and so on. And I never thought there was anything unusual about that. I
Well,
think
right.
back on that and say,
We didn't
what,
those
you know,
days.
what is going, and the women could not go out on the street at night, and we had a curfew, and there was a Horn and Hardart right around the corner from the dorm, and so we always tried to get out before 11 so we could, before they closed. But we had to roll up our pants. We could not have our pants showing. We had to wear a long coat. What did that mean? I mean, it's just really crazy.
I know.
And I just say that because I think that the awareness of our lives, or what our lives were, changed so dramatically in 10 years. I would say maybe took a little longer, 15 or so, but for the world.
Yes.
But I don't think that when we started out our adult life that we were thinking too much more about what women did than vote and be wives and mothers.
Right.
So anyway, let's just jump over a bunch of years, and we know that suddenly feminism seemed to burst into the world.
Oh, it did.
So Barbara, what happened to you after a decade or so?
Well, I had 3 children, and I decided I wanted to go back to graduate school. And I checked a lot of things out and decided to get a master's degree we were living in Montclair at the time, and I decided to get a master's degree at Seton Hall University in vocational rehabilitation counseling, working with either disabled or special populations, helping them either redirect or start from scratch, getting a job. Oh.
No.
Well, and so 3 years later, I had my master's degree, and I got a job working in a school system with special kids, and went on from there working with the elderly, which were not exactly in line with my master's degree, but there were a lot of aspects of it that did help.
Yeah,
And that's where I stayed, even after we came down here.
right.
I-
So you worked basically full-time or part-time and?
I was working full-time when we lived in Montclair.
Mhm.
When we moved down here, it was part-time.
When we were talking about this, you mentioned that Harry and your kids were okay with that, except
were.
that you made dinner.
Yeah, I mean, my classes were late afternoon, early evening, so I usually, well, the kids were pretty good at helping with that too, but yeah, it was not a great time of day to have to be out and about, but that's the way it was.
And they had to
They
do it for themselves,
They did.
which was a good challenge,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Well, what were you seeing in your profession? What happened?
Ah.
You got accepted, you got a degree?
Yeah, I got a degree. I got married a couple of years before I finished my degree, and then I was offered a position teaching Old Testament at Princeton Theological Seminary, which brought us to Princeton. And my husband was very supportive and very excited about what his wife was doing and could get a job that didn't have to be so geographically determined. And I still hadn't thought anything about that this was unusual. I mean, it was something that, I wanted to study this subject, so I went to graduate school, and I was offered a job, and okay, I took this position. And it was only a couple of years into my time at Princeton that it suddenly occurred to me that I had never met an ordained woman except myself before, and that I found out that I was the first woman hired in anything other than Christian education in all of the 10 seminaries that the Presbyterian Church ran across the country. And we also noticed there was a wonderful woman colleague, Frida Gardner, who was in Christian education, was the first long-term woman member of the faculty, and she had been there 9 years. And she had most of the women students because they were all in the Christian education 2-year program. But gradually, those women began transferring into the 3-year Master of Divinity program, which would give them more vocational options. And very gradually after that, the application pool began to tip so that more women were applying to that 3-year program than to the 2-year Christian education program. And Frida and I, every year, called together all of the entering women students who wished to come for just an opportunity to get acquainted and chat. And
what percentage would you have said that would be?
At that point, between 5 and 10%.
Okay.
Yeah. It eventually got up to 40-45%, but not probably for the next 20-25 years. It went up very slowly.
Typical of professional schools in general.
Right, and particularly in theology, because there were many theological reasons as well as cultural ones that there was more resistance to women taking formal positions of leadership in that field than in even compared to law or medicine, and we still see that in the statistics that we've compiled from today even. But what we noticed was the importance of having known someone who had gone ahead. Because in the early days, none of those women who would come to these entering student gatherings had ever even met a woman minister. And then gradually, they had heard one preach one time. And then gradually, as a visiting person at their congregation. Right. And then later on, there had been an assistant minister who was a woman in their own congregation. And as those things began slowly to change, it was interesting to see that those were mostly the kind of women who would come, who had seen an example of somebody who was actually doing
the role models.
Yes, it was really important.
Yeah.
So
I think you would see that in other fields as well.
Yeah.
So my experience was one of other women being alert to what was not happening for women. And Barbara and I shared our experiences with the League of Women Voters, and then you with the Present Day Club, that in those days when you got your mail or your notices, it was addressed to Mrs. Marvin Reed or
Mrs. Harry Brown.
So, and you know, we thought nothing of it. It's not that I wanted to deny that I had a husband, but it was a sort of an example that we weren't really ourselves as confidence or something.
Well, certainly for a women's club or a women's organization.
Yeah, right. But the League of Women Voters was very active in getting women at least involved. And so when our two kids were like 2 and 4, I was asked to study the works of the West Windsor Planning Board and go to every single meeting and write up what happened. That was a typical thing for the league to do, and the notice would get put in the newspaper and so on. So I learned a great deal, and then I finally realized that I had to do something about what I was hearing, and ran for office in West Windsor in the early days, in the 70s. Came very close to winning, and my platform was on planning. And so I thought, well, I'll still continue. I didn't win, but I'll still continue because there was a new committee that was elected of younger men. So lo and behold, I was approached by a new organization, the Women's Political Caucus, which was totally aligned with the two parties. You were either a Republican in that one or a Democrat in the other one. And that was, first of all, put them in a much more active mode than the League of Women Voters. And they told me, the Democrats, that the county was all in Democratic hands, that they did a study and looked at how many openings there were on committees that the county had responsibility for, and how many women served on any committee. Well, I think there were like 2 out of 12 or something. And they marched off to the county executive and pointed this out to him and said, we don't want you to have the trouble of trying to find women who can serve. And they had me and 2 other people who they were suggesting, and they suggested me for the planning board. And I don't think he told them yes at the time, but I got a call, and I was the first woman to serve on the planning board. But I suddenly realized that because I had been doing the watching of the planning board, I knew a lot more than the other members who were all men. And lo and behold, I was the first woman, and then I was the first chair, and it was a gateway to a whole lot of other things, but it also was a gateway to realizing that women had to take action. That was really, when I heard they went to the county executive, I said, you're telling him what to do? And I think that was a real breakthrough in how you think about this, that women speak to power, right?
Yeah.
So let's jump ahead sort of to more recent times. And Barbara, you then became what I consider an esteemed volunteer.
Yes.
And that's a big role for women too. And was that something that happened when you moved to Princeton?
Well, not initially. When we moved here, I started a program for homebound elderly, like one that I had been running when we lived in North Jersey. And but when I gave that up, I think I started delivering Meals on Wheels from there. And I did that for years, and then got involved. I had been involved at the YWCA from the time we moved here. I started out in Newcomers Club, and just stayed. Eventually was on the board and on various committees, etc. So, yeah, that's.
And so now you're taking a leadership role in making sure that the Y is heading ahead.
Well, yes, I have definitely stayed involved there, and I'm on a couple of committees. Yeah.
We should watch for what develops, right?
Oh yes. Well, I mean, it is going to be exciting. They're doing a lot with their facility, and their child care program is booming, and that's certainly been a major help for women, allowing women to work or do whatever.
Yeah.
And
So when you mentioned facilities and raising money and so on, that was also a big leap that women could be on
Yes.
boards that would do something like
Yes.
that. It was really only
Yeah.
men who were building buildings and
Right.
going around and asking their fellow friends for money.
We're having to raise millions of dollars.
And now women are giving.
Yeah,
It's really
absolutely.
And women go to the Nassau Club.
Yeah.
That was another thing that I remember. That, oh my heavens, they're telling those men they have to admit women? Really?
I remember the women faculty at Princeton telling the administration that we would not go to any more of their prospective faculty lunches or dinners at the Nassau Club until the rules were changed there. And so then the administration kind of was nudging the people at the Nassau Club to rethink their policy.
So we have a book on the table here, Kathie. That's
Yeah.
probably the most up-to-date thing that
Well,
we can say.
I love the cover that they did for this. It's called Faith of Our Mothers Living Still, Princeton Seminary Women Redefining Ministry. My esteemed retired colleague and I, both in our retirement, Abigail Ryan Evans and I put this book together. Came out in 2017, but there are a lot of helpful statistics just in a very small section of it that gather up what overall we could find from public records of the situation of women in general, in the workplace, family life, income, all those kinds of things. And then we're able to compare that to some statistics concerning women who were specifically in the ministerial vocation. But the other piece of it that I think is special is that we found 28 women affiliated in different ways with the seminary, many graduates, but other people in Africa, in Korea, representing all races and ethnicities and denominations, and big churches and little churches and chaplaincies and military, all kinds of things. And each of them was invited to write in their own words, a couple thousand words max, story of their journey. And what we see there of ones who are pretty new and ones that have been out for a long time kind of gives a different way of giving a snapshot of how things are changing and where they're going, and gives us some clues about how to think about not just theological education, but where things should go in general. And some of those things would be very applicable to other fields beyond just religious leadership. So.
Great. And as you think ahead, you mentioned that the Y is focusing on its facilities, but I guess we still have to worry about women working and their children
Right.
having good care, being able to afford
Yes.
childcare so that they could make money to have a better family.
Yes, I mean, we just had a benefit to raise funds for scholarships for children in childcare. So, you know, they're very committed to that and to empowering women in general, which I like.
I guess, and that's what we've learned from all the coverage of COVID, how much attention is not paid to women. I recall being introduced to Congresswoman Martha Griffith and being told that she's the mother of Title IX. And I must admit, for all of my interest in politics, I sort of had to say, oh my God, what is that? And got a little coaching, but for me, it showed how laws once again have to change. You can get the vote, but there's still a lot. And she was the one that carried the ball in Congress with the support of other women doing the research to get a requirement that if a college or a university gets federal funds, there have to be equal athletic facilities for women to men.
Oh.
And again, I thought, I can't believe that this is that we need a law for that, you know, or that's a real problem. So I think we have a lot of still things that we need to think about in those terms. We now have that. But I also think that we can't give up on encouraging women to run for public office, because at the very local level in New Jersey, 14% of the women, of the mayors are women.
Only 14%.
Only 14%. And I think to some extent that is partly related to what do you do with the kids at night?
Right.
If you have to go to meetings and so on, that we really have to think about that. And it also means that men have to be supportive if women are going to participate. And I think there's a lot of examples of what that really has happened with men. And that, do you think our kids and the students you meet, they have a very different relationship now, don't you think so?
Yes, I would say.
Well, yes.
No.
Well, yes, but I mean, all the statistics show that the men are still not doing 50% of what needs to be done around the house and the childcare. The thing that we noticed in our research was a significantly higher proportion of women are in positions like chaplaincies or other than straight parish ministry. And for those who know how those things work, the thing about the night meetings and the unpredictability of the schedule and all of that, and we weren't able to get granular enough to see exactly what that was, but it's probably likely that that made family life more workable, not just other things.
Well, we knew that this conversation could not end, and that maybe the people who are watching and listening would also like to jump in. So before I came up to the club room here where we're taping this, I asked Robin that if other people wanted to talk about this and not have us just think that we're the only ones who were thinking about this in our lives, basically here at as we are at Stonebridge, having lived through so much, that she said she'd be glad to organize a discussion group. So that would be, I think that would be terrific. So thank you, I'm going to say, to all of you, and thank you to, of course, Kathie and Barbara for engaging in this conversation, and for all of you who are watching and listening. You have our best wishes for a very happy and thoughtful celebration of women's history at any time you wish to do it, even beyond Women's History Month. So thank you very much.